Okay, so the movie starts, and we have George Clooney facing the camera because he's the one in the trailers, and you're like, oh, George Clooney, he's gonna be in this movie a lot, right? And it's like, okay, maybe in the second half. Regardless, George Clooney's like, shit's going down, and then there's a lady off to the side going like, I'm quirky! And then George Clooney's like, I'm gonna tell a story now. Here's that story. We see young George Clooney. It's the 60s, it's the World's Fair. And it's very future-y, but also Walt Disney is sponsoring it. So George Clooney, as a child, has invented a jetpack, but Dr. House, who is the villain of this movie, is not impressed by this jetpack that this young child has invented. I don't know why.
By Dr. House, I assume you mean Hugh Laurie?
No, it's Dr. House, but with a
okay.
British accent, because that's his real voice. Anyway, he insults this kid for inventing a jetpack that doesn't quite work.
Right.
And then this little girl's like, here's this pin, follow us. Doodly-doo, I'm mysterious. So then young George Clooney follows her and House, and they go into the, I'm not kidding, It's a Small World ride, which is at the World's Fair, which is true to history, actually. But still, they decided to put It's a Small World in this so it gets points off. So he puts the pin on, gets on the It's a Small World ride, and then a laser shoots him and the pin and scans it, and it's like, oh, it's like It's a Small World, but then a thing shoots down, and then he goes down a water slide, and it's like, this is like It's a Small World, but it's extreme and mysterious. Walt Disney, Juminati, I don't know. Okay, so he gets on this elevator, but it's not really an elevator, it's like a time travel dimension elevator, which you don't know until the end of the movie, but I'm telling you now because I'm better at writing script drafts than Brad Bird. Okay. So, there's a joke about him not being tall enough to get a helmet, but really it's a poorly done gag. Anyway, elevator takes him to kind of the future, but not the future. So, he gets off the elevator, there are people flying around, there are flying cars, which you don't see that much of in the movie, because, contrary to what the trailers would have you believe, this movie has very little to do with futuristic technology in the city itself.
Oh.
Yes. So, there's some gags, he fights a robot, he falls off a cliff, oh, now his jetpack works, because robots, and then he flies around, and then Hugh Laurie sees him disapprovingly. And that was the first 20 minutes of the movie, don't worry, has nothing to do with the rest of the film. Filler. Okay.
I'm confused as to what's happening.
So was I. So, here we are, totally different setting now, we're in Florida, apparently. Setting doesn't matter because...
World?
No, not Disney World. This is a totally different character. It's a young woman whose father works for NASA, but he's losing his job because apparently the space program doesn't have enough funding to continue to do things. They're dismantling a rocket control thing.
Like real life.
Yes. So, she's sabotaging it because she's a teenager and can sabotage large cranes, as you do. She sabotages them, gets arrested, and then there's like a pin that's given to her when she gets her stuff back because she makes bail.
Like on accident?
Yeah, it's not on accident. You'll find out later. It involves a robot child.
Of course it does.
Yes. So, she gets this pin. We never find out who paid for her bail, also. It could have been the robot child.
George Clooney?
I don't think it was. Plot hole. Okay, so she touches the pin, and as you've seen in the trailers, she sees like a field, and it's like stuff, and she hits a wall, because really what she's seeing isn't there, she's still where she was, she's just seeing things differently.
Yeah.
Did you think that was funny in the trailers? I hope so, because they used the same gag about 12 goddamn times.
Wait, she runs into shit?
Runs into shit, it's in a lake, whatever. You know, funny things. And yes, it's a kid's movie. But are kids this stupid that they need the same joke 7 times?
Usually 3 is the number.
3 is the max. Oh. First time to make it funny, second time to not make it funny, third time to make it funny because it's overused. Right. That's the rule. Maybe 4 if it's really, really, really overused.
Like Family Guy.
Yeah, there you go. So her dad picks her up, and the dad's really not happy. It doesn't matter, though. He's barely in this movie. He has about 3 minutes of screen time, so really, forget he's even there. She's in a car by herself, even though the dad's there. He's irrelevant. She touches the pin more to establish the rules. She can touch it with a cloth and it's fine, but if she touches it with her bare hands, she gets transported to the field outside the city. Okay, so later she touches it again, finds her way into the city, again making jokes about falling down stairs and almost dying because she can't see where she's going. Finally gets into the city. This is the scene that you would see in the trailers. Like, ooh, look at this futuristic city. It's all beautiful and it's amazing. Best part of the movie, 2-minute scene. Barely see the city after that until the very end. Probably a 2-hour movie. Okay, so this gets her to wonder what the fuck is going on. So she finds this pin online, uses eBay. I like when movies use actual websites, so I do appreciate that they used eBay.
Like Transformers.
Yes, she finds this pin on eBay. Yep. It links to a website to a place in Texas. She goes to this place in Texas. We do not find out how this young teenage girl gets to Texas, by the way. I thought they were going to explain it. They don't.
She's there?
She from Florida to Texas, and she tells her little brother, hey, tell Dad I'm going on a camping trip. She leaves, and then the next scene, she's in Texas. How did she get there? Movie. So she gets there, and we get a cameo from Keegan from Key and Peele.
Oh.
He is a nerdy robot, but you're not supposed to know he's a robot yet. Also, this scene tells you that Disney owns Star Wars now because they refuse to not have a shot with either R2-D2 or other Star Wars paraphernalia in this nerdy comic shop. And they actually play the Star Wars theme at one point to really drive the point home. Do you get it? Do you get it? Anyway, they're killer robots. She shows them the pin. They're like, where did you get the pin? She's like, I don't know. It was given to me by the thing. And they're like, where's the girl? And she's like, I don't know. And they're like, we're going to rip off Terminator and try and kill you. So Keegan-Michael Key, robot, tries to kill her. The little girl from earlier shows up. The little girl was with young George Clooney in the 60s also, so it kind of makes you go, why is this little girl, unless you're not stupid, and then you go, oh, she's a robot too. She's a robot too. So, she kind of kung fu fights her way out of this, which is kind of cool.
She kung fu fights?
She fights and uses guns and stuff, and it's kind of cool technology. She shows like a bomb that freezes them in time in this bubble.
How does she have this technology?
Because she's from the place that's futuristic.
Wait, the little girl?
The little girl.
Oh,
yes.
okay, so the little girl is a good guy.
Yes.
Not a killer robot, but she's still a robot, but not a killer one.
Yes.
She's a helping robot.
So then she takes the girl in the NASA cap. She wears a NASA cap all the time
Right.
to distinguish who she is because she has no character. Then they go on a ride in a car for what seems like 7 hours of the film. Because the first hour of this film, nothing happens. There are movies that ask questions, and that's fine, as long as you answer those questions and there's a balance between the questions and the answers.
Sure.
But the first hour and a half of this movie is asking the same question. What's going on?
Where the fuck's George Clooney?
Oh, don't worry. The Clooney is coming.
Oh, good.
Whether you like it or not. So what happens is they're driving around. She's like, what's going on? And the robot refuses to answer questions. Although they do hit this child robot with a car really hard, and it made me laugh in the theater. It was great. The worst part is she gets hit by a car, and you don't really know yet, like, her limits, but she gets hit by a car hard. You see the collision. Dude gets out of a car and is distraught because he thinks he hit a child and killed her, and he's taking her balls. Anyway, other girl steals a car. Long story short, lots of questioning, very few answers, a couple robot jokes. They get to George Clooney's house. The robot girl leaves the real girl there. Meets George Clooney. George Clooney playing George Clooney in this movie. He was not acting. He was paid to show up and read a teleprompter. Not saying it's a bad performance. It's not a performance. He's George fucking Clooney, which is fine. I like George Clooney, but it's George Clooney. So you've seen this scene in all the trailers of the robot fight, which is the best fight scene in the movie. They spoiled the whole thing in the trailer.
Yeah.
There are only probably 3 or 4 shots in the actual movie that aren't in the trailer in that scene. They get in the bathtub, shoot off, and you think, oh, are they gonna go to Tomorrowland now? Hour mark? No, we're gonna land in a pond 50 feet away from his house. So then they meet up with the robot girl again, who wasn't in that scene because, I don't know, maybe it cost more money to have her in that scene and they refused. Whatever. Has a motorcycle that doesn't work. Irrelevant. Again, wasted time. They move on. They go to this place that's, I don't know, a television studio? They don't make that entirely clear. They get into this capsule thing. They take some sugar because, according to him, you're going to lose 90% of your blood sugar in about a millisecond, so you need this, and you're going to feel like you want to die, but it'll be fine. Transmits them over radio waves to Paris, France. They're on the Eiffel Tower. Okay, sure. Whatever, movie. I've resigned myself at this point. We're not going to get to Tomorrowland. I feel pretty gypped. Anyway, Eiffel Tower is a rocket ship. Surprise. So, they go inside the Eiffel Tower, which they talk about Nikola Tesla and Edison, and then it's a rocket ship that takes them to Tomorrowland, except it's not in space. It's another dimension, but they need to get into space to go to the other dimension because they needed a shot of them in space. So, they get to Tomorrowland. Surprise, no one's really there. It's really fucked up and old. Twist. Turns out that the pin she was having was really an advertisement the whole time, and it was supposed to get people in the 60s to want to come to Tomorrowland, but Hugh Laurie is an asshole and didn't want anyone to come, so it's a piece of shit nothing now. You like that 2 minutes of cool futuristic technology? That's good, because that's all you're getting in the movie. Fuck you, audience. Anyway, Hugh Laurie shows up and is like, hey, George Clooney, we banished you for reasons. And he goes, yeah. And and Hugh Laurie's like, we're gonna have to kill you now. And he's like, that's not cool. Check out this girl, though. And he's like, what about her? And he's like, you know that machine that I invented when I was here before you banished me that predicts that the world is gonna end in 60 days, which we're springing on you in the last third of the movie? Yeah, what about it? Well, she makes it so that doesn't have to happen. The 100% chance goes on to like 99.9999 when she makes certain decisions. And House is like, all right, let's go exposit. So they go up in this big elevator into the machine, and they show that in like 60 days the world's going to end via a combination of nuclear war, global warming, civil unrest, and all sorts of things. All in 60 days. It's all going to go down.
The world being not Tomorrowland, but the other world?
The real world, because Tomorrowland is in another dimension, apparently. Which they really don't talk about as much as it should be for the fact that it's in another fucking dimension. Okay, so, again, George Clooney proves, like, hey, look, she makes this decision, and for a brief second, the screen flashes from horrible apocalypse to everything's fine, and House is like, fuck it, I don't care, I'm House. Locks him up. Okay. So Robot Little Girl and him talk. Turns out him and Robot Little Girl had kind of a pseudo-relationship when they were young, but the thing is she's a robot, so she stays the same age, but he's in his 50s because he's George fucking Clooney.
So it's creepy?
And they have a creepy sort of pseudo-romance going throughout this, and I'm going to talk about it later because it's awesome, and it's another one of those moments in the movie where I went, are they going to do this? They didn't, but I'll talk about it then. Okay, so they decide, oh, I figured it out. That thing, that pin you gave me earlier that made me think really positive thoughts because it was like an advertisement, this thing is doing the same thing. It's not actually predicting the future. It's a feedback loop that's making people's negative visions of the future come true because they think it's already going to happen. They're resigned to an end. So we gotta shut that machine down so people start thinking positively and looking for solutions to problems instead of just talking about them.
Is that the point of the movie?
Okay, so they go tell this to House, and House is like, I know, that's why I built the machine. Shit was going wrong, but no one was doing anything about it, so I built this machine to make them think about all this bad shit that's gonna happen to them, but it just made them not want to do anything even more. You fucking people, you liked it. You liked the idea of the apocalypse because it's the only version of the future that you didn't have to work for. Alright, House, whatever. Brad Bird, thinking everyone's lazy. Anyways, they're like, but House, we can't do that. And House is like, I don't care. Here's an action scene. They have an action scene where they're gonna blow up the thing, but they don't because the bomb gets put on a beach. But that's irrelevant. Anyway,
a beach.
There's a portal to real world, and it gets thrown on a deserted beach and blows up because it's like a nuclear bomb. Anyway, House shoots a little girl robot who jumps in front of a bullet that was gonna hit George Clooney. House is under a thing now, by the way. House is crushed to death. By the way, lots of deaths in this movie for a kid movie. They kill 3 cops, 2 Eiffel Tower guards, and they, like, death. They vaporize them, and it's hilarious. The little girl robot's like, George Clooney, let me tell you all about the romance I had for you this whole time, even though it's creepy because I look like I'm 12. And they do that, and they kind of flash back to their childhood again, and George Clooney's looking at her like George Clooney looks at women he wants to fuck, but she's like 12. So he gets on a jetpack because, you know, he had one on at the beginning, so we gotta tie this up somehow. Takes her to the top of the thing because she's gonna self-destruct and destroy this thing that's making people not care about the end of the world, basically. Okay. Or something. It's not explained super well. It's this whole movie happens in the last third of the movie. The first third might as well have been the trailer for the movie. The second third is like, why are we here, Brad Bird? And they're like, I don't know, just act. And they acted. And then the third, he's like, okay, I'll start writing the plot to the movie. This is the best scene in the movie, only because the whole time he's holding her above this thing. They're having this sort of pseudo-romantic conversation, like a goodbye. And I'm thinking this whole time, is George Clooney gonna make out with this little girl? Because if this were any other movie and they were of the same age, these exact words, there would have been a kiss at the end of this. Yeah. And my girlfriend was there with me, and on the car ride home, we both kind of went, so, that scene with George Clooney and the girl, did you think he was gonna kiss her? And she was like, yeah! So George Clooney almost makes out with a little girl, if not in reality, in all of our minds, so I feel a little raped. Anyway, so He drops her on the thing, it explodes. It's like, all right, is that the end of the movie? Kind of. So then we see other robot little children that George Clooney has now recruited, along with the girl and her dad, who's again here for his last 10 seconds of screen time. He's a NASA engineer. That's important because she had a NASA hat, and they needed to explain why she has a hat that says NASA. So he says to them, we're rebuilding Tomorrowland. We gotta get new people. So you're gonna take these pins, which are the same pins she had to make her see these visions, to want them to come here and, fix stuff. And also, it's past the 60 days and everything's fine. Everything's fine, right? Like, not being scared for 60 days makes global warming not happen, right? I'm Brad Bird. Anyway, then the kids are like, what are we looking for? And George Clooney's like, dreamers. And then they go out and there's a montage of people finding these pins. Like, there's an Asian who's playing a guitar and it's thrown in his guitar case as a tip. And he looks at it, and then there's someone working on wind turbines, and they see it, and there's someone in Africa protecting elephants, and they see it. Honestly, many of these people's skills not suited to building a society, not helpful, but whatever, George Clooney, it's your society, run it how you want to. And then the movie ends with them all in that field, and I sat there thinking, not a terrible movie, but not the movie I was expecting. This movie lies to you in the trailers. Which is fine. It's not a bad movie. It's just if I were a kid, I'd be pissed off. It's a good thing I have patience, and also want to see George Clooney make out with a child, otherwise I would be wildly disappointed. So Jake, what did you think of this movie that you did not see?
Sounded terrible.
Did it?
Yeah, it sounded really bad. I would not go see that.
It was disappointing.
Yeah, I'm not going.
It's not like a terrible movie or anything. I'm not like, oh, that was trash, but man, 2/3 of that movie didn't have to be in that movie at all. That could have been a short film at best. Like, seriously.
It sounds bad. It doesn't sound like anything I would ever want to watch.
Well, it's a good thing I went to see it and not you.
Yeah.
I mean...
because I would want to... Like, if you call it Tomorrowland, don't not show it.
Yeah, they didn't, like, at all. And that was a cool part of the movie. It was like, oh, look at all this cool ideas for things. It's kind of sci-fi 50s, but also futuristic.
It's like buying a ticket to a football game and just sitting down in an empty stadium and drinking a beer and leaving.
That's what it was like. That's a good metaphor. I did like the theme in the movie, which was, hey... we can do it, everyone. But also, House is in it. This movie was weird. The sequel should probably just be George Clooney making out with a robot girl for 2 hours. It would probably... I'd feel better about my ticket price if it were that. I'd be appalled, but it'd be a little saucy.